Hi, I'm Zach. I've been vegan for 8 years. In this video, I'm going to talk about why I believe it is a moral obligation for most people to be vegan. So, before I was vegan, I was not vegan. Just like you, kitty. This is my parents' farm / property house where I live, and there's all types of animals and stuff. And I grew up here eating eggs and steak and drinking milk every day and meow. And although this farm isn't your traditional farm, none of the animals here are used for anything. My parents have the animals to take care of them because they love animals. Although that's a whole nother video and there's a lot more to it than that. But what I'm saying is, I grew up here and I grew up not vegan, and then whenever I moved away and I was living on my own for a while, figuring myself out and life, I learned what a vegan was. I learned from watching the video, a TED Talk about Esther the Wonder Pig. And then once I found out what a vegan was, I was dumbfounded. I was like, there's people out there that don't eat animals. We don't have to eat animals. And I was very skeptical at first. In fact, that entire night I stayed up watching videos and then researching the videos on unbiased sources as possible, government sources, and I went down the rabbit hole and I saw they were skinning rabbits and they were doing all types of horrible things to every animal, pretty much. And I also realized that, people could survive without eating animals, without eating their secretions, the eggs, the dairy. It seemed weird to me at first. I was like, animals die for eggs and dairy? Since when does that happen? We don't need to kill them for that. Why would we do that? And my eyes were opened. And since then, I've realized it is a moral obligation to be vegan. In my humble opinion, I would say anyone who wants to be compassionate, who has morals, the morals that our society holds, which is not to cause unnecessary suffering or torturing or to use and exploit beings for simple pleasures or for shallow, arbitrary, or abstract beliefs that aren't rooted in existential existence, like traditions and culture. And from that point, I saw things from a third-person bird's-eye view, and seeing society and everything, it seemed so disgusting, and I was very angry. And I can still get angry in that sense, but I've matured in a way, and I've seen anger not as anything good. It doesn't help the cause, and it just makes me feel like crap, and it makes everybody around me feel like crap. It's not empowering. So I don't go to anger anymore. More clarity and compassion and empowerment with grace, clarity and compassion, and just seeing things the way they are. And so since that day all the way till now, I've seen being vegan as a moral obligation for most people. I say most people because some people living in a village somewhere, and some cultures where, they don't even have enough water to drink or barely any food to eat, I'm not going to tell them how to live their life. Although I'm sure right now, we have the power to feed everybody on the planet plant-based and vegan and give them all the nutrients they need very easily if we were to just actually do what needs to be done and stop doing the things that don't need to be done, like wasting all of our land and water and resources on fattening up animals to slaughter them and kill them. One of the things I learned was it's far more efficient to feed a population off of a plant-based diet. Both you get more calories per acre and you get more nutrients. It's not all black and white, but it's far more efficient to grow plant-based vegan foods. And so along the journey, of course, I faced and I learned all of the counter arguments. For example, crop deaths. And it's pretty easy to realize that this isn't an argument against veganism, because if you actually care about... You're a little crazy today, Katie. If you actually care about crop deaths and plants, for example, some people even say, well, you kill a lot of plants, plants are alive. If you actually care about plants, and if you care about the crop deaths, then being vegan would be the answer, because we create more crops to feed animals that we eat and to constantly feed the animals we eat than we would if we just created crops for us to eat, because animals eat a lot more crops than us and they are alive for a lot more seasons to get them ready to be killed for us to consume them. And so it is objectively just more efficient if you actually care about that. But this video is about the moral obligation. Why is it a moral obligation to be vegan, in my opinion? There's many things I could say. I'll start off by saying, if we don't have to kill an animal, then it's a horrible thing to do. It's a horrible thing to kill an animal just because you like the taste of their flesh. That's putting pleasure over life, over their entire life experience. And these animals, it's amazing to me because I grew up on a farm with a strong connection with animals and seeing them as individuals. But there's people who don't see them as individuals, so it's easier for them to disconnect. It's easier for people to not see animals as individuals and not see the emotions they feel, the intelligence they have, but beyond the intelligence, just their individual life experience. And sure, it's on different levels, from a tiny mouse to a big cow, from a fly to a crab to a monkey. It's all on different levels. And of course, it's easier to disregard a fly on a smaller level or a clam because they don't have that emotional experience or memory, the same memory. And so, but that makes it even worse whenever we think about the animals we kill and eat here in America or in Western culture: chickens, pigs, cows. These animals have a lot of emotion and energy, memory. They got energy too. These animals have a lot of emotion and memory. Just like ours, we are just more capable. We just have more intellectual capacity. We have more memory. We have more depth for emotion. But a good analogy or metaphor, can't remember which one it is someone said, in an argument against a vegan is, well, animals aren't as intelligent as us, or they don't have the same capacity of emotions as us. And you could say the same thing about other human beings. Some human beings aren't as intelligent as other human beings, or don't have the same capacity for emotions or for social connection. Is it okay for us to kill and eat them? That is a strong thought process to help destroy justifying killing and eating animals, but also it helps fortify the idea that being vegan is a moral obligation. And if we don't have to kill and eat animals or raise them or use them for entertainment or use them in any way, see, it's not just about killing them. It's not just about causing them suffering specifically, inherently. It's also using them, seeing them as something to use, not someone who experiences life. And ever since that day, whenever my mind and perception blew up and I saw that it was possible to survive, but not only survive, but thrive as a vegan. But forget thrive, just survive is all I need to say to make this point. As soon as I saw that, ever since that day, then my perception on animals changed. Even growing up on a farm and seeing them as individuals and having compassion for them, I never realized that I was disconnected, even here, taking care of animals. And there were times at small moments and just on the day-to-day basis, how I looked at animals was lesser than me. And I still looked at them as something to get something from. You know, here it's more, we're getting love and compassion and that cuddly energy. And before I was vegan, I saw animals as, oh yeah, like I'd walk up and be like, okay, put me in a good mood. It's your job to put me in a good mood. And then with food, it was animals' job. They're here to be used to sustain me. They're here for us to make clothes out of them, to entertain us at the circus, racing. But ever since that day, after watching Esther the Wonder Pig and my eyes being opened and seeing beyond that, the animals are not here for us. They're here with us. That's a custom song I made. I've turned people's comments into songs. But it's also a relevant point in this video, and that's animals are not something, not a commodity, not a product on the shelf. They're a feeling, breathing being. They're an individual experiencing life, maybe not in the same dimension as us, but they're experiencing the same life as us, just in a different body. And so, seeing them as something to use, it just doesn't set right with me. Oh, you got a boo-boo. Seeing them as something to use, I know I said like beyond suffering, but as soon as we see animals as something to use, it's hand in hand with suffering. Because as soon as animals are something to use, then it's okay if they suffer, if we're getting something out of it. And many people don't see the capacity of suffering that happens, for example, in the dairy industry. Just like how I thought dairy cows didn't have to die. There's a lot more to it than that. But because it's a dairy industry where people are trying to make money off of these lives, they're trying to impregnate these cows as much as possible, because cows only make milk if they're pregnant. That's what mammals do. They don't just make milk. They make milk only if they're pregnant. So they're forcibly impregnating these cows. They're taking their babies away because the milk is got to be sold. It's a business, an industry. And the cows are a product, a commodity. And just the way that this society and everybody talks about, food animals. These are the food animals. These are the pet animals or companion animals. No, they're all animals, and existentially, they all have the same capacity for suffering. It's a culture thing. Also, like, dogs are food animals in certain countries, but they're pet animals in other countries. Cats too. Don't worry, kitty. I'm a vegan. And so, seeing animals as something to use will only breed more suffering and atrocities and horrible situations. Even in small family farms, they're still seen as something to use. And, people always say we love our animals, but that's just them protecting themselves from feeling horrible about the fact that that's not love. It's like, if you truly loved your animals the same as you loved your family member, would you have a family member where you would, force them to get pregnant and then take their milk or take their eggs, where you're constantly taking something from them? That's not a healthy relationship where you always need to take something. That's not love. Love is not needing something in return. Unconditional love is giving and providing and being there for them and seeing them as an individual, not as something to take. And another good point is, even on these family farms, whenever these animals run out, they get old eventually. They're usually slaughtered before they reach an old age because the meat isn't going to be as good at old age. But also, they're not creating as many eggs, or they're not creating as much milk. They can't get pregnant again. Or their milk production just goes down in general because their energy's been used up. Their body's been used up. And so they're not as valuable. They can't get something from them. So they're usually slaughtered at a certain point, especially inside the industry, which is where over 90% of people get their animal products. Like at the grocery store, at the restaurants, even at the organic stores, even at the farmer markets. They're all connected. The farmer market, people likely, many times, like if they're selling chickens, they could have bought them from a hatchery, or it's all connected. You very, very rarely will you find someone who is a completely family-owned farm who has a cow that they're not killing whenever they reach a certain age, because that's also our society. They just see it as okay. It's okay. These animals are here for us to use, and these animals are here for us to not use. And morally, that's wrong. It's all made up as far as the justifications. And not even just morally, but if you have any sense of humanity, any sense of compassion, existential compassion for all of these animals and beings, and you just take yourself out of it and you realize we don't need to use these animals and put them in these situations where they're seen as something to use, where it breeds so much potential for suffering. And on top of that, it's less efficient. It's destroying the soil quality because of the monocrops that we create. we grow these monocrops to feed animals. A lot of people have made claims that monocrops like soybeans and corn are vegans destroying the soil, vegans destroying the planet. But that's just a misinformed, uneducated perception of the fact that most of those crops are going to feed animals. And so if we truly care about soil quality and saving water and saving land and the environment and the well-being of animals and the well-being of people, then being vegan is a moral obligation, in my humble opinion. Now, saying this, I'm not even sure this helps, because usually what it does is it upsets people, and then it makes people want to pick apart everything you say, and then people start recycling the same arguments that have been easily debunked over and over again. And then they'll do personal attacks and they'll say that I look sickly. But it's all because they've been offended and they feel attacked. Their worldview has been attacked. And so I understand why people are this way. And also, I've thought making a video like this doesn't always actually help as much as I thought it would at the beginning. But maybe it does. At the very least, it helps some people that are on the edge, on the fence, like I was that night whenever I first learned what a vegan was after watching Esther the Wonder Pig. And I saw all this information, and I had a choice. I could stay back in my comfort zone, or I could actually go out and take a leap into growing as a human being. And so I can imagine other people out there watching this who may not be vegan or may have started eating more plant-based and started learning more about what's happening and opening their heart more to every single living creature and being on this planet. Or not even every single one, just to more than what was inside your circle, where you accepted them as ones that have the right to live their life and not be exploited. Maybe there's some people out there like that, and that's who I want to reach. There's always going to be the haters. Well, I don't want to say always. You never know with life. There's so many things that could happen. We could all die tomorrow. An asteroid. Or something big could happen. But likely, intellectually speaking and thinking about it, there's always going to be people who don't agree with what I'm saying. And that's not who I'm talking to. Although I will listen to them, and that's not who I'm directly talking to. And I'm talking to them too, because sometimes I know they can be inspired also. And sometimes they can teach me something also. Even if they're being rude about it. But who I'm more so directly talking to is the people who just need a little bit of inspiration and push, an example. They need some argument inside of their brain that they've been using to justify killing and eating animals to be debunked by some intellectual argument or some point to make them see things emotionally. And so I could see this video inspiring those people. Let me know. Leave a comment down below. Do you believe it's a moral obligation to be vegan? For the animals! Woo!